Since the whole OGL debacle, there have been quite a few new RPGs that have been announced that are in the works, and there is one that stands above the rest in my eyes, is the one I am the most excited for, and spoilers, it is not the Critical Role Daggerheart or the MCDM RPG. So I want to share with you what it is, why I'm excited for it, who's making it, which is actually where I want to start, is who's making it, because I have followed this. It's a YouTuber. I've been a fan of his for a while. A lot of the stuff he puts out, I really like, I agree with. I actually reviewed the first book he released, which was a bunch of homebrew optional rules to add to your D&D games, and I loved it. You could see the passion that was put in there, and I think that he has a really good kind of sense for what makes a game fun. The book I reviewed was All Cantor's Almanac of All Things, and I thought that it was a great book. So, of course, if you're familiar with it, you know that I'm talking about the Dungeon Coach. I think he's a fantastic YouTuber. He doesn't know that I'm doing this video. I've never talked with him before. This isn't sponsored. I think that he just, again, really understands what makes a game fun. At least I often agree with his takes, with his videos. So when he announced that he was going to be making DC20, his own RPG, I was pretty excited. But just liking him and some of his homebrew books and videos and whatnot does not necessarily mean I'm going to like his game. So let's chat about the game and what he's produced and why I am excited for it. First, the way that he is actually going about making it, I am a fan of. A lot of people do these play tests that they already know the game that they want to make for the most part, or they're doing more internal play tests, and their public play tests are really just a marketing ploy, whereas his playtests, I very much get the impression he's actually listening to the feedback. The adjustments that he makes seem to really be coming from the people that are playtesting the game. So I think that that's cool. Now let's actually talk about the game here. Some people are comparing it to like the next edition of Dungeons and Dragons. And that's because it's still a D20 based system. I know some of the newer ones, Critical Role, MCDMs, games, they have kind of got away from the D20, at least, for like attack rolls, stuff like that. They have moved a bit more away from the D20 system, but this sticks with it. Though there are a lot of differences. This is its own game. I love games like Shadow Dark, but that's more of like a twist on old school D&D. I think that was their slogan. It's like old school gaming with new mechanics. I don't remember exactly how it goes. But this game is its complete own system with a bunch of new rules. And speaking of attack rules, this is where we'll start. One of the things that I really like is the way that they do attack rules. I, for a while, have not loved the D&D 5e, or I think all editions for D&D did this with attack rolls, where you roll your attack. If it hits, you then roll damage. It slows things down a bit when you're having to roll for an attack and roll for damage, and it feels weird when you roll really high for an attack, it's not a crit, and then you roll really low for the damage. It's just not the best feeling, and as far as game balance, there's a lot more variables when you're rolling to hit, and then if you hit, you're rolling to see how much damage you do. MCDM, Cairn, another system I really like, solves this problem by just not having you roll for attacks. You just roll for damage and assume everything hits. That's cool. I do enjoy that more than the 5e way of handling attacks, but I like DC20's way of handling it even more, which is you only roll to attack, and depending on the weapon you're using, dictates how much damage it does. So each weapon has base damage. So an example might be if you're wielding a short sword, that does 2 damage. So let's say you're wielding a short sword, someone's AC is 15. If you roll a 14 or below, you miss. If you roll a 15, then you hit 2 damage. Great, super easy, streamlined, but it gets better. The higher you roll, the more damage you can do. So every 5 that you go above the target AC, you can add another point of damage. So if you were to roll a 20 against somebody with 15 AC, 20, that's a heavy hit, and you get to add an extra point of damage. If you were to roll a 25, 10 points above the target AC, then that is a devastating hit, and you get to add 2 extra damage. But of course, he does something special with crits to make them feel a little bit better. And that is, after you've calculated the damage based on what the AC was and how much you rolled, you just get to add another 2 damage on top of it. Just slap that extra 2 damage right on top for rolling a nat 20. I like this for a couple reasons. One, it's faster, more streamlined. You just roll a d20, and then you know how much damage you're doing, and you get to move on. The second is for balancing purposes, it makes it more consistent. You're just rolling to see if you hit or miss, and so there's less variables in the mix. And since we're on combat, let's go ahead and talk about another combat thing, which is the action economy. DC20, more similarly to Pathfinder than 5e, they use action points. You get 4 action points to use in a round. Not necessarily on your turn, but in a round. And so if you want to move, that's an action point. You want to hit something, that's an action point. Pretty basic stuff. There are no, bonus actions, reactions, any of that. Now, I did just say there are no reactions. What I really mean is reactions aren't a category of their own. It's pretty simple. You just have 4 action points. If you use a reaction, somebody leaves your attack range and you hit them with an attack of opportunity, that's one of your action points. So when your turn comes up, you now only have 3 action points. You could use all of your action points up before your turn, and then your turn is super fast because you don't have anything that you can do. You might save all of your action points and use all of them on your turn. I am a fan of this for a couple of reasons. It makes things a bit better when it comes to balancing encounters and fights because there are certain characters that may be optimized to make sure that they use their action. They make sure they use their bonus action. They might be a battle master fighter, and so if somebody attacks them and misses, they can use riposte, and they might have sentinel, so if somebody walks into their range or attacks somebody else, there's a lot of certain classes might have a lot of options to where they're getting their reaction off every round. If you're playing something like a wizard and you don't have anything to use your bonus action on, you're not playing against a spellcaster to counter spell, and my point is there might be situations where you're not getting bonus actions, reactions, all of that stuff off, and so you are less efficient. With this, you're going to get all 4 of your actions off every round, so it's going to be a lot more consistent. And it opens things up for character creation quite a bit because you don't need to sit there going, do I take this so that I have a bonus action, or should I take this other thing that I really like? I had a character that usually used his reaction to cast Shield, but then I picked up, I don't remember exactly what it's called, like Gift of the Gem Dragon or something. When someone hits you, you can blast them back and do some extra damage. I never use that reaction because I always just use Shield to avoid the damage. And with this system, you got more reactions that you could potentially use, or you don't have to worry about having reactions at all and just use your points on your turn. I'm a fan of that. I actually really like that system, and especially from the character creation aspect, not having to worry as much about making sure you have a optimized, efficient character. Speaking of character creation, the third thing that I want to talk about a little bit is just that, the flexibility that you get in character creation. One of the things that I really, really like, and I've kind of done in the past, is essentially letting people pick what their primary stat is. I forget exactly what he calls it, but if you're playing a fighter, you don't necessarily have to have strength as your primary stat. You could have charisma or intelligence as your primary stat, and your primary stat more represents the amount of training and skill you have as a fighter, and then it's also your charisma. So if you were to take charisma or intelligence, so let's say you take intelligence as your primary stat and you're a fighter, if you were to get into a grappling contest with someone, you're not going to be able to use your intelligence for that. It's just a strength check. So, you're probably going to lose that, but you still are good with your sword. You don't have to use strength to hit with your sword or dexterity to aim and shoot your bow. It could be intelligence that you're using, and so I love that. I said I've kind of used this in the past, and I had a wizard or a player that was playing a Blade Singer wizard, and they wanted to flavor it more like a Jedi. And we were in Eberron, so they were playing a Kalishtar, and they kind of have this spirit that they can't directly talk to, but they can kind of meditate and sort of communicate with. And he was like, oh, that kind of reminds me like the way the Force works. And so he was like, I really want to play this, flavor it more like a Jedi Blade Singer type wizard. And I was like, oh yeah, that's really cool. And this was before Tasha's, I believe. And so he was at first he was asking, well, can I swap the wisdom bonus that I get from my race to intelligence? And I was like, yeah, of course. And then we decided, well, why don't we actually just swap your spellcasting modifier as a wizard from intelligence to wisdom? And it worked great. He flavored it more as a wise wizard than an intelligence-based wizard. And so you can do that with this system. You don't have to break the rules in order to do that with this system. And so I really like that aspect of it. And if any of this stuff, if you're like, I don't really understand exactly how that works, I'm confused, Dungeon Coach, he's got a lot of videos on him where he goes into way more detail and explains it far better than I could. I'm just talking about things that I like, things that I'm excited for, and things that they're doing well. I'll also drop a link to some of the main videos where he talks about some of these aspects, as well as the Kickstarter, which I encourage you to go look at. It's as of the recording of this video, it's been, I think, maybe 24 hours, and it's already over $500,000. So that's crazy. You'll love to see it. But yeah, go check it out after this video, of course. The last main thing, and this is a small thing, but I really appreciate it, and that's that there are no spell slots. It's mana pool, which I think for a new person getting into it, all of this stuff will be so much easier for new people to pick up and learn. You can pick whatever you want as your main stat. You only roll for damage as far as, your attack rolls, so you don't need to. I remember when I first got into it, I was like, attack rolls, damage rolls, and I don't know why. Like right now, at this point, it seems so simple, but it confused me at the beginning. And then actions, bonus actions, all of that stuff. This is super simple. You have action points. There's only attack rolls. You can pick whatever you want as your primary stat. You've got mana pools, so there aren't learning spell slots. And another bonus on this, there's stamina, because he didn't forget about the martial classes. And the stamina allows the martial classes to do cool stuff, but then not also be broken. And so martial classes can still be strong, and you can balance them. And so there is a lot of just great stuff in this RPG that I am very much looking forward to playing. The last main reason that I'm excited for this, and it's more of a personal reason if I'm gonna be completely honest with you, and that is the Dungeon Coach is not necessarily a titan in the industry. He's just one guy. And not to belittle his, I think it's 60,000 subscribers on YouTube. Like he has a following, and I don't want to belittle that in any way whatsoever. He is doing fantastic for himself, but he is not Critical Role. He is not MCDM. He is just a guy who is doing what he is passionate about and finding a lot of success with it, which I personally find very inspiring. I want to see him be successful. I have liked his content pretty much since he started uploading videos. Never talked to him before, but he just seems like a very cool person who very much understands what makes games fun. So go check out his Kickstarter, and if you have the ability to do so and feel so inclined, throw him a little love.